Muslim argument against homosexuality is that it's not natural. And although I cannot explain what that means, what is your refutation to it?
If you take the word natural to mean literally pertaining to nature, and if you see behaviors in nature which somehow replicate homosexual behavior, would that make it natural for them?
Yeah, it does tend to. They tend to argue that animals don't do it. But there are 400 and something species of animals that do. Yeah. And also there can be nothing that humans create which is not natural, because we are part of nature. So anything we do is natural.
Yeah, so it's very tendentious wording.
Yeah.
Yes, Faisal.
Yeah, one of the things which would be related to homosexuality, even though not directly, would be what do you understand from Quranic punishment when it says what is actually condemned, what is the word zina used for? In my understanding, it would be possible, and you can say whether you agree or not, that any consent, marriage is basically viewed as a consensual contract between two people. So any consensual relation cannot be criminalized, would be viewed as one or the other form of marriage. And only sense that something can not be marriage is if there is absence of consent, which in modern terminology would be called rape.
Yeah.
Is that what is zina actually? Is it rape?
I mean, to me, zina is not rape, but zina is actually having sexual relations and then saying that you're chaste, and number two, you're also cheating on your partner. To me, that's zina.
But what sense should it be criminalized? That is.
When I say, firstly, we have on the punishment. Probably my understanding would not be traditional.
Okay.
But when I say when it's criminalized because it. Number one, let's say if you want to marry some person and this person says, well, I'm chaste, I've never had sex, and then actually he or she has, then you would be cheated. Secondly, if you were married already to someone else and then you went around having sex, that would break down social relations. So in that sense, it's criminalized, yes. Yes, Russell, yeah.
So the people who look, you're saying, who are they practicing this oppression against? Themselves, other people?
Guess, especially outsiders. The word guess is very unique among their people. The word daif, guess.
Outsiders, guess, okay.
Yeah.
Like minorities, maybe?
I don't know about minorities, but certainly their own circles, it doesn't happen. It happens outside their circles. You see, so when Luth was visited by the messengers, they demanded the rights because those people were guests, were outsiders, as it were. Yeah, sorry, Martin. Yeah.
I think you mentioned an important point about rape, and there's actually not much occurrence of rape between homosexual relations in homosexual context. It's usually about control. Like rape is, even issues of paedophilia and stuff. It's usually about control or abuse or correlation with that. And
I would include that.
Yeah, it would include that. So I mean, like a relationship based on a love or mutual respect.
That is just simply not.
It doesn't
there.
even mention it.
Yeah.
Like if two men live together and two men, there was numerous. It's gone throughout in human history. Like two men have lived together, two women have lived together. A man and a woman live together. In an Islamic society, who would go to a man and woman and say, "Excuse me, but are you two married? Can I see your contract? Do you two have sex together?" You wouldn't do it. Neither would you have the right to ask two men whether they're having sex.
Actually, in Malaysia, they do that to men and women. But they don't ask that to men, though. So,
yeah.
ironically...
I mean, it happens.
Ironically.
It's an invasion of privacy, which I would argue is really against Quranic principles. Also, how would you find out?
Yeah, and
I think it's very interesting on 2 points. One, in Arabic countries, how homosexuality is hidden in plain sight. Men walk along holding hands, linking arms, kissing. I mean, really, you go into any square, if you go into the main square in Gaza, it looks like any other city centre in the world. Young men with makeup, hanging around, holding hands and kissing. But
But-
they're not having sex, they're friends. So it's a kind of a hiding in plain sight where men are
Kissing
allowed
on
to do
each-
everything. They sleep at each other's house, they have sleepovers, grown men have sleepovers with each other, and this is perfectly normal in society. So that's one thing I think is interesting, this idea that you can't, like my dad thinks you can't be Scottish and gay. You can't be Muslim and gay, you know, the same sort of thing, it just wouldn't happen.
They do things that here are considered gay. You know, in Muslim societies, two men holding hands is gay in the West.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, yeah, like here, if you saw two men holding hands, that's
So-
a gay couple.
So,
Yeah, I would
That's okay,
think
yeah.
that here.
Yeah, but over there, it's
when
not.
I've seen it in
Yeah.
Gaza, and I've said to
Well,
my
it
husband,
is. But
I thought they didn't do that, and they said, oh, they're not gay, they're ridiculous. But the other thing
How
I
do
think
you
is
really
interesting-
know?
Pardon?
But you
How
wouldn't.
do you really know? You wouldn't, would you?
Because it's just not in the don't be silly. It doesn't happen. Yes, I sleep with my best friend, but it's not. You know, we might actually penetrate each other, but it's not homosexuality. We're not having sex, you know. But anyway, but my point about the reputation, I've always found that story of Lot very, very difficult. Especially with Christians who do that, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and it's an abomination and blah, blah, blah. Because they're perfectly okay with Lot saying to you can have me virgin daughters.
Yes, that's it. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
There
I
you
find
go.
that very weird.
That's not a problem for them. But men
But
having
men-
sex, two grown consensual men having a loving relationship is an abomination.
Yeah.
But here, go and play with me little girls. That's all right.
It's
You know,
male dominance, isn't it, really?
I've always found that very, very problematic verse, and it actually worries me, the obsession there is with homosexuality, and nobody actually points out the fact that God is obsessed with men having sex, but He doesn't mention paedophilia. Like God doesn't know that happens, or what, or doesn't think it's
Or
wrong.
women and women. Does
So,
it-
are you asking me or something? Or? I'm not sure.
I'm making a.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes, Alan. Yeah.
You do what you want now.
Okay. Yeah.
I just had amnesia. These guests who Lot had, were they messengers of God? Or?
Yes. Yes, they were.
So, what was their, were they messengers like Lot or like some sort of angel?
No, they were to bring destruction on the people of Luth.
Okay, that's
So were they angels? What were
I've not concluded this. I mean, I have some rationalistic explanations, but so far as my research goes, that this is just simply not homosexuality. That's all I can. It is about power, but certainly I've not fully grasped that bit yet. I don't believe that Luth offered his daughters for them to have sex with. That's absurd. I just don't believe that. Yes, Martin.
So it's purely about sexual oppression.
Hey?
It's purely about sexual oppression.
Sexual oppression, indeed. I would say the Qata Sabil as well shows that their elitism was in all forms of society. You know, they exerted power over everyone, and the manifestation is sexual dominance. Yes, sorry, Martin.
Can I pick up on what Marion said about nature, natural practices? There isn't actually anything about homosexual relationships which is any different from heterosexual relationships, in the sense that, like when a lot of arguments that people use when they use the natural argument is that, like Adam and Steve. Well,
I
that.
don't see that.
Well, if two men having sex is unnatural and therefore unlawful because they can't create children, then a man and a woman who can't have children are also unlawful for them to have sex, and therefore they can't enter a relationship.
Yeah.
So
And mainstream Islam does believe that when
yeah,
I
well you
was
can
getting
divorce.
married, we had to go and have the talk to mum and
Yeah.
and he actually said to my husband, you know, really, with her age, can she have children?
Yeah.
Because if she can't, I'm not marrying you.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's common. That's common in Sharia law. To arguments about
Whoa.
when you can divorce your wife or husband, like if they're disabled or if they can't have
Absolute
children.
no-no for that.
But we don't go and throw them off buildings, you know, barren women. So
I personally think it's a crisis of masculinity, you know, kind of an insecure thing which is going on. I read about this. Now it's become more prevalent because Muslim masculinity has been threatened. Well, obviously, you know, we've been colonized, etc. And this is the way we respond to it. I know from Southeast Asia, gender and sexual alternatives, there was never a problem before, but now suddenly they've become like visible and were so targets. You know, I think that's just so wrong. You know, people should be free to do what they want. You know, and you know. Sorry. Yes, Faisal.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this thing. You know, at the level of projecting the view and at the level of decriminalizing homosexuality in Muslim countries, the argument, you know, from a very traditional for a very traditional kind of Muslim, it will become very difficult to accept homosexuality not being wrong. But what is rather easy for them to accept, and maybe even this argument could be put forward, that if they don't accept the whole alternative, they can at least accept the argument of it being decriminalized. And I think that's very important, because you see, it will take the number of people agreeing with homosexuality not being wrong in Muslim community, it would take some time for this idea to be absorbed. One thing that we can at least work on, and I think this idea would be okay with lots of even traditional Muslims, is that this particular argument should at least get decriminalized, and even worse, at least, or even if it remains criminalized in countries like Iran, it should remain in a way that it cannot be implemented. Right now the problem is that Iran is killing more homosexuals than any other Muslim country has ever done. You know, they sneak on people, homosexual, kill him, homosexual, kill him.
And creating transsexuals for free.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so, you know, this is something which has to be addressed too, you know.
Sorry, Russell. Yeah.
In the orthodoxy, has there been any sort of evolution in the interpretation of those verses, or has it always been interpreted that way?
They have shown that they have said that these are homosexual rapists instead of just any homosexual, and as such, it's not applicable, you know, to punish homosexuals in that way. I mean, these are the modernist progressive types. So,
the traditional sort of Islamic scholars.
but I mean, they do use tradition. The only thing is they take a much more liberal approach to tradition.
What I mean is the traditional Islamic scholars, the orthodox.
The conservatives, yeah?
Conservatives.
Okay.
What has there been? You said what their view is. What I'm saying is, has that been always the case, or did they have a slightly different view in the past?
Well, interestingly, Abu Hanifa, founder of the Hanafi madhab, he never advocated a punishment for homosexuality. So there was a time when traditional Islam was probably not all that harsh. Yeah. Alan, yes.
You said earlier you don't believe they offer the daughters.
No.
So instead, well, how would you then translate that?
I'm still
You're still
thinking.
researching.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to say that also it was only in the 19th century that the term homosexual started to be used about sexual relationships, because up until the mid-19th century there were homosexual schools where they were called that, same-sex schools were called homosexual.
Okay.
And there are some people who say a more correct term, because if you change the term to homophilia, which is like, I don't know, there's many words with philia in it, not just the other one. Yeah, it's like a liking or a love for, you know. It actually removes the sexual context. And I think that a lot of people have the problem with discussing homosexuality because it says, it has the word sex in it. You know, it's like, it's something sounds wrong. But if you talk about, if you were to argue about homophilia, I don't think many people would.
We closing just to let you know.
It's 6, right? You close at 6, don't you?
No, 5.
5?
Yes.
Okay, we'll close up now.
Just that not many people would be against
Okay.
same-sex people having love for each other.
I would say the same thing about transsexuals. They've
Yeah.
now changed it transgender. I think
Yeah.
that's a big improvement.
Yeah.
Final comment, Tamsila.
Just again, reiterating what a lot of people have said, and particularly about the masculinities things, because it's all about, it's a male interpretation of a story, because it doesn't talk about same-sex, female love relationships
No,
at all.
doesn't at all.
So by grouping homosexuals, which includes men and women, it's not relevant. Because it's not relevant, you're right, it doesn't exist, and it is about masculinities and a majority male interpretation about particular verses which completely ignore the women's issues and women's role in Islam and women's relationships.
Agreed.
Otherwise it would be there as well, it's not.
Right.
And men assuming the role of women.